your red, and you have your yellow, and you have your black. So if these were to be your three primary colors, what happens when you add yellow and black? Can anyone predict?
Green.
Green, right. So let's look at it. There you go. And that's a beautiful woodsy green, okay? And the red and the black is going to make
Purple.
right? And you can see, I'm going to grab a little bit of this cooler red just in case it's closer to what. Okay, so there's your lavender, and let me lighten it so that you can see how sort of lavender it is. So you can see it's not a bright, clear purple, but that is a purple. And actually it's a lovely purple for shadows on a face. And then obviously the yellow and the red will make an orange. Okay, so there's your color wheel right there. Okay, your primary colors and your secondary colors. The secondary colors are the ones, the lavender, the green, and the orange. And if you mix more yellow, there you get a nice warm yellow, added something to it, added a little more orange to the yellow, and then more red to this orange, and now you're getting a little bit more of a salmon color. And then let's pull some of this red in here, and you're going to get more of a violet. Can you see that? Okay, so we're working our way around the color wheel. This is going to be a deeper purple. I find it easier sometimes to see these colors if I tint them just a bit. And then just to prove how blue this is, Diane's really using that blue for the sky. Okay, so there's a blue, and we want something a little more bluish green. We're going to put more black into this green. Pull some of this green in here. More blue black. Or blue green. There we go. Grab a little bit more in here. Okay, so that's more of a blue green. And the more yellow you add, the more neon, lighter, bright green you get. Okay, so there's your full color wheel, but that's a limited palette. And all you have on here are black, yellow, and red. And you can make some beautiful, fairly sophisticated color because you don't have a whole lot of modern colors in here just sort of dazzling you with their fancy footwork, and you're constantly dipping. I have one student who must have 20 reds and doesn't quite understand what all those reds do. And they really just sort of confuse her. So it's far easier to simplify your choices at first, okay? So with hue, you have the choice of color. So yellow or green or blue. I could put a blue in here. Now let's just supplement this palette a tiny bit because he did throw other colors in as well. And so here is a brighter blue, and now you can see right away that this is making more of a nice kind of tealy blue-green, a little bit more of an aqua, and can lighten it. So there's more of your aqua blue, okay? And if you add in, okay, so that's a limited palette with either black or adding blue in. So that's a fairly limited palette, and that's ultramarine. If you want to broaden your palette a little bit, but still keep it fairly limited, what you'll do is pick a warm or cool, a warm and a cool color of each hue. So we have a cool yellow, and here is a warm yellow, a more, we'll just those here, a more orangey yellow. Okay, so can you see the difference? One is leaning towards blue. It's a little bit more greenish. Can you see that? So it's cooler. And the other is leaning more towards the yellow, red side, which is warming it up. Okay, and I already put out my cooler red, which you can see is a more purple red, and my warmer red, which is this Cad Red Light, and then a warm blue. There are a number of warm blues. You could put cerulean out. I like Cobalt Turquoise Light. And, oh, I need to put this here. I keep needing
I keep putting it on the wrong one.
out here. Yeah, I'll transfer some of those colors. Okay. And so you can see how just expanding your palette this way is going to make it easier to make some of your in-between steps. So we still could do it, you know, with this red, but it shortens all the steps you have to take. There's that. I better put a little bit more right there. And then now look at what happens in terms of your choices of green by adding the blues in. So when modern dyes and pigments were discovered, one of the biggest additions to the palette were the blues and some of the greens. And you can see that color just exploded when that happened, okay? So we can actually add the greens in there instead of making the greens. So here is a cool green, which is Viridian, and the warm green, which I use sap green, but there are also, oops, I forgot to put this on here. Oh, I keep putting them on both palettes. There you go. Thank you. And here is your cool green. So now this is still considered a fairly limited palette. It has black and it has white to lighten or darken, or the black functions like a blue. It has a cool and a warm blue, a cool and a warm green. Let's pull this out here so you can see how warm it is. You can see how warm that green is. A cool and a warm yellow, a warm and a cool red. Is everybody with me so far with that? When I say warm or cool, do you understand what I mean? And please feel free to ask, because this was very confusing to me at first. You got it?
I think so. So if it's going more from the black to the yellow, that's getting warmer.
Yes.
If it's going from the yellow to the black, it's getting cooler.
Yes.
So yellow is your central pivotal kind of point.
Yes. So this is considered, as you move towards this cooler red, which you can see this red is almost heading towards purple. Oh. Okay. This can be the confusing place, because red is still considered a warm color, and yet there are warm reds and there are cool reds. Blue is still considered a cool color, but there are warm blues and cool blues, and that's where it gets confusing. Every color can have its warm or its cool variants. Okay, so let's take this red, and we've made a hue choice or a color choice, red. We can make a value choice with this red, lightening it to create a tint. So this is a tint, okay? Or darkening it, adding a black. So there we go with a darker red. Can you see that? So now we've created a tint or a shade, okay? So we've chosen the hue, we've lightened it to make a tint, we've darkened it to make a shade. But suppose I want to then desaturate it or gray it or neutralize it, okay? I would have to learn how to go across my color wheel to its opposite to then neutralize it some. So the opposite of red is green. And so I'm going to put a little green in here. And I want you to see what happens when green gets mixed with red. Can you see that? And that's a fairly dark green. So let's try a lighter green. Let's try some of this green and put this in here. It neutralizes the red. Can you see that? Both of those greens neutralized or grayed the red. That's usually one of the first big, harder steps for a student to make. I can't tell you how many times people have come in and said, I'm painting daffodils and I bought the perfect yellow for it, okay? Yeah, maybe there are parts in that picture where the yellow is this tube color, but the chances are good that it's not the tube color in a good bit of it. And you will need to know how to not just tint or shade that yellow, but how to neutralize it with its opposite. And the opposite of yellow is purple. So let's go ahead and put a purple out here. That's another step. You can put warm purples, which are more violet, with cooler purples, which are more blue. Let me see here. This is dioxazine. It's a very dark, very cold purple. So here's a purple. And you're painting daffodils that are this color, but maybe those daffodils have some darker shaded parts. So look at that beautiful dark color. You can see right away that that would make a great shadow, is using its opposite. Did I lose the top somewhere?
Yeah.
Don't worry about it. We'll find it. So you make a hue choice, yellow or red. You make a value choice, how light or how dark. You make a saturation choice, putting a bit of its opposite in to neutralize that color a bit. Okay? You can see there's a very subtle difference between these two. And that's more sophisticated than that. Beware of ever using color just straight from the tube unless you're really sitting a lot of different pieces of color near each other, like, say, the Impressionists, and they all sort of scintillate and work together and neutralize each other just visually, collectively. Or painting wet into wet, where you grab a little red and tease it into your green background and it melts into it. Okay, so wet into wet, or a lot of color side by side. But that's more sophisticated than straight out of the tube. The last decision you will make is a temperature decision. So remember I said 4 decisions: hue, value, saturation, and temperature. And that's where having a warm and cool of each will help. You've already got this warm red on here, and you've got a cool red on here. And so you can right away look at it and say, oh, well, I'm looking at a red that's a little bit cooler, so I'm going to shift this way. Maybe you're working on something and you say, you put the color on and say, it's just a little too warm. Well, then creep cooler around your color wheel. If you're putting green on a background and you say that green is too yellow, what direction you go? You shift towards your blues, okay? Don't shift towards more yellows, all right? So having everything arranged in a color wheel will enable you to make temperature shifts more easily. I've talked about how much I like this Michael Harding Warm Light Yellow, and it's a fairly neutral yellow. It's not like these radiant colors, but it does help to make some really interesting tints. So if that's a little bit of that warm light yellow, I'm going to take, remember I took this Cad Scarlet and I mixed it with white to make that tint. Here's the Cad Scarlet. and here's this.